If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is the Maura Murray series, episode 61, Sharon. And in this episode, we will be talking about Sharon Rausch, the mother of Billy Rausch. If you haven't checked out the Billy Rausch episodes on podcast, that was, of course, the boyfriend, possibly ex-boyfriend, at the time of Maura Murray's disappearance. We don't know what their conversations entailed. We don't know if she broke up with him and that was why he spiraled out of control with all the phone calls. We don't know if he was the good guy and she told him that she was in trouble and he was trying to help her in some kind of crazy situation. This is Mindshock, where there is no steering. We examine all possibilities. We don't fall for logical fallacies or any of the silliness that is peddled by the narrative steers in this case. So I'll be going over a lot of information, highly questionable and mysterious actions by Sharon Rausch, from early interviews to recent developments, and everything in between. It seems like there are several different individuals in this case who have been steering the narrative in different ways from the very, very beginning. And of course, when all this is exposed, the steerers get highly triggered and also very telling on even just, again, the notion that Maura Murray might not have even left UMass or have been at the staged accident scene in Haverhill, New Hampshire. That gets everybody all riled up, which is very, very telling. That there's certain individuals that are desperate to have everyone take on blind faith as gospel truth that Maura Murray made it to Haverhill, that she made it however distance away from UMass even. And yeah, it's, again, this is when you compare to other missing persons cases, you don't see this level of desperation by the steerers, completely ignoring multiple elephants in the room, and the strange behavior of not only individuals surrounding the case and Maura Murray, but of law enforcement. UMass, Amherst, Haverhill, New Hampshire State Police. We have actions here that are just so suspicious that you don't see in any other cases, and the steerers, of course, have a nothing to see here attitude about all of it, which is also quite telling. So we'll be going over all these things. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description to help us get more and more episodes on not only the existing true crime cold cases, but to cover new cases and help get the awareness out there to help these cases get solved, or at least maintain awareness until someone comes forward. Whereas a lot of these older cold cases, the reason they're able to be solved is because of awareness and just being in the public eye as opposed to being forgotten. Because, of course, these victims deserve justice and their families deserve closure. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through, or you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock. I know not everybody always gets the notifications on YouTube. If you like this particular episode, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you could find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. And if you do want access to our private Reddit, just find Mindshock on Twitter, which is Mindshock Pod, P-O-D, on Twitter. You could shoot me a message there, and I can get you added to the private Reddit if you're sick of the obvious steering on the controlled main Maura Murray subreddit, r/Maura Murray, which is an obvious sham for the sole purpose of steering and pushing certain narratives while shutting logical examination of many theories down under all these other guises. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings, leave them in the comment section. All right, so to set the stage here, we are going to examine some recent unhinged antics by Bill Rausch himself. As usual, the highly accurate James Renner, attacked by many trolls and steerers, but vindicated at every turn. Sometimes it even took a couple years for his statements to become backed up, but they were. And again, the steerers and the trolls who attack James Renner, they keep forgetting. He's got a pretty sterling record when it comes to reporting things. Whether they were true or untrue, he's being honest about what people told him. Okay, so this was posted on his blog, MauraMurrayMystery.com, November 18th, 2020. Boyfriend of Maura Murray attacks her father's friend. Billy Rausch attacked John Smith, Fred Murray's private investigator. And again, John Smith, like James Renner, vindicated at every turn. Everything he has reported has been accurate. Either it was something told to him, or he was reporting information that was reported as he reported it. Whether it's true or untrue, John Smith and James Renner are both pretty clear about reporting information they received. Of course, the steers and the trolls pretend they actually lie and make it up, which, of course, is not true. John Smith, also one of the most honest individuals in the entire case. And like I've mentioned this before, when I've explained this case and pointed people to just small pieces of media, whether it's clips from the Oxygen show, some trailers, whatever, just quick breakdowns of the case, they come away saying, we don't know what happened. Everybody's shady, but John Smith seems like the most honest guy, regardless of whether, again, he's pretty clear about keeping all theories on the table as well. It's really telling how people get attacked for simply keeping theories on the table. You don't see this in other cases, and the steerers and the trolls have jumped the shark so many times now in how desperate and obvious they are into trying to get people to not look at certain theories or down certain avenues. So it's really mind-shocking how simply saying keep all theories on the table is grounds for being attacked, because everybody has to take on blind faith that Maura Murray was the driver of the Saturn at the staged accident scene. And there's nothing to see here regarding the timeline, or Cecil Smith, or any of the actions of anything, or the missing security footage, the missing liquor store footage, all of the silence at UMass. That's all perfectly normal. Okay, so continuing on with this article here. Billy Rausch attacked John Smith, Fred Murray's private investigator, in a series of messages where he also rejected the notion of taking a lie detector test. And just quick point on there, I've advocated for brain fingerprint scanning. This is military technology. I'm sure Bill Rausch is familiar with it. It doesn't matter if you're trying to be deceptive, because this particular test, Stephen Avery took it in the Making a Murderer fame, and of course the test exonerated him. He had no clue what happened with Teresa Hallback. So, or if he did, the information presented he didn't recognize. So everything the state's case against Stephen Avery is all bunk nonsense. So even if he did kill Teresa Hallback, nothing the state presented at trial was true. So if he did kill her, it was in a completely other manner. So in either way, he didn't get a fair trial, obviously. So Bill Rausch would basically rejected the notion of taking any lie detector tests. Although, if you really want to solve this case and rule people out, it is kind of strange. Let's say you're Billy Rausch. So again, there is one scenario where he might possibly be the good guy. Maybe he doesn't want to deal with the test because it would reveal, let's say, some kind of sensitive information about a CI or some kind of undercover FBI agent that intersected with Maura Murray that night, some kind of operation gone wrong, and there's been some kind of multi-agency cover-up as a result of that, because A, they don't want to look bad, and B, if it's compromising a bigger investigation. Yes, Maura Murray is very important. This is a missing person. If she was killed, somebody needs to be held accountable. But if there's a bigger operation with many, many murders and many, many more people harmed, possibly upper agencies might prioritize some of these bigger fish that are constant, maybe human trafficking, maybe killing many, many people. If they want to go over that after them first, maybe they're not willing to dismiss Maura Murray completely, but they want to fry the bigger fish first before having someone held accountable for what happened to Maura Murray. I'm just thoughts, because there's obviously some variables that are unaccounted for in this case. I'm not saying anything is true or untrue. I have no idea. This is Mindshock. The only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. Unlike the steerers, we're not peddling any narratives. We're not expecting anybody to take anything on faith. Either there's hard evidence or there isn't. But either way, if Bill Rausch does have some kind of information from being not only in the military, but being trained in psychological operations, possibly top secret programs, who knows? He might not want to take the lie detector test because it could possibly reveal or he's afraid there might be some intersection with sensitive details, even if he was the good guy. Or, of course, maybe he's not responsible for whatever happened to Maura Murray, but he's still kind of a bad guy, and he doesn't want to take a lie detector test to kind of expose any of those negative things. Or he is responsible for Maura Murray, in which case he wouldn't want to take a lie detector test anyway. However, if he is trained in psychological operations, he could probably beat a standard polygraph. In which case, maybe he would jump at the chance. Or fourth or fifth option, maybe he's just completely gone off the rails and he's no longer operating with a full deck, which might explain some things as well. And in that case, he could either be the good guy or the bad guy. But because he's basically off the reservation now, there's no way to tell. Anyway, continuing on with the article here. In retaliation, he tried to connect Smith to his girlfriend's disappearance. I'm not taking a lie detector test before my trial, John, Billy wrote. He is currently awaiting trial on sex abuse charges in D.C. Smith seems to have upset Billy with several questions related to why he never returned to the White Mountains to search for Maura. Billy, in turn, hit back by suggesting that maybe Smith should be investigated too. I'm asking where you were the night of February 9, 2004, he wrote, followed by, you are probably the expletive supporter of Fred could have right now. Keep up the good work. And in an odd exchange, for someone who used to work in veteran affairs, he writes, you're a piece of expletive, John. Go find some Vietnam vets and tell them how you would have won the war. I mean, that's kind of a weird statement. Again, possibly due to somebody is that someone who's off the reservation? Would they have made some kind of statement like that? I don't know if there's not a lot. I don't know. Maybe Bill Rausch just went bonkers. Maybe the stress of all these trials or whatever happened with it. I mean, if he was trained in psychological operations in the military, who knows what kind of tests they could have done on him or made him go through whatever mental training. People break. That wouldn't be the first time. Here's a small sample of the vitriol from social media. Bill Rausch wrote this. Deranged, you want to compete against the boyfriend of a missing girl, John? Huh. No, you're the kind of guy who couldn't be a volunteer fireman. You know the type. A bit overweight, thinks he's tough, isn't very clever, open carries. Wait, so you're not allowed to open carry unless you meet those other criteria? What the heck? There's a lot of people who open carry. 16 years and you plan on solving the case by giving me a polygraph. You are an expletive PI. Oh, John, you know the answers to these questions. John responded, actually, I was a volunteer fireman. But maybe Bill Rausch knows John Smith's life story better than he does. And of course, Bill Rausch's comments here and writing style, they are eerily familiar to a lot of trolls and steerers who pretend to know a lot of things. And we'll be getting into that with Sharon as well in terms of the language used when they post, which betrays them. Bill Rausch also said, sure, John, line it up, buddy. You don't even have to tell me the questions in advance. You are probably the expletive supporter Fred could have right now. Keep up the good work. No, John, I love how you expect me to take a polygraph, but you can't handle tweets from Jenny. Spoke like a true washed-out cop. He responds, I'm not the one that needs to be taking a polygraph, and I'm sure I don't even have to repeat this. So again, either Billy Rausch is playing stupid or he really is this dumb. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. But obviously, John Smith isn't saying Bill Rausch taking a polygraph would definitively solve the case. Taking a polygraph for suspects, I mean, that's standard procedure. I mean, that's investigation 101. I mean, they polygraphed Butch Atwood. So just taking the polygraph could just rule out some information. It wouldn't necessarily solve the case, but again, Bill Rausch is probably also pretending that FBI statistics on missing or murdered women don't exist, and that the significant other is not the most likely, even though obviously they are. But of course, Bill Rausch is keeping up this facade. He also says, oh no, John, how will it look? What will the Murrays say if I don't take a polygraph that nut job John Smith sets up? Also, I'm not sure John Smith said he would set anything up. I think he just suggested that Bill Rausch take a polygraph. It would probably have nothing to do with John Smith. He can go to any professional. I'm not taking a polygraph before my trial, John. Any PI should know that. After my trial, you go after it, buddy. And I'm not sure what he means by that, because he's still not saying he would do it. He's telling John to go out. That doesn't make any sense. Go drink beer or tell PI stories to your cat, whatever it is you do with your life when you're not obsessing over Maura and attacking people who she loved. And again, I don't recall seeing any real attacks. I mean, asking Bill Rausch to take a polygraph test in order to rule out things, I mean, that's an attack? I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with the info I've been provided. I don't exist to shame you, John. You should think about your mental health like you did back then and what it's doing and has done to your life. I mean, that's an interesting psychological projection by Bill Rausch, because his mental health seems to be deteriorating with these latest tweets. He did offer some little bits of pieces of information. I was at Wells River Motel when locals offered support. They offered help, not conspiracy theories to distract from search efforts. So again, he's pretending that logical inquiry is conspiracy theory. Very telling. None lived as close as you to the accident, also false. None were as obsessed as you with Maura. None attacked the Murrays. Where were you on February 9th, 2004, John? Everyone's tracking you were at least 17 miles from the accident, if not closer. Yeah, that's really not incredibly close. John, you've been questioned by law enforcement and you don't think this community has a right to know your alibi. No one has been cleared, John, and you've been questioned by law enforcement. So is Billy Rausch admitting there no one has been cleared? So is he admitting he hasn't been cleared? Well, what is he... what are these Freudian slips telling us? Asking where you were night of February 9, 2004. You live miles from where she was last seen alive. Actually, she wasn't seen there alive. Was she, Bill Rausch? And doesn't Bill Rausch know that? And if he doesn't know that, why not go through the publicly available transcripts and interviews with the Westmans, with Murat, with these individuals that specifically did not see Maura Murray? Butch Atwood is the only one, and for whatever reason, everybody treats him like an infallible god, and yet everybody else is mistaken. But Butch Atwood can't be mistaken, even though he said the person at the accident scene did not look like in the pictures. You inserted yourself into the case. You were questioned by law enforcement, refused to provide evidence of your alibi. I'm not sure how he refused to provide evidence of your alibi. To whom? I mean, I would assume John Smith did provide evidence of his alibi to law enforcement if they questioned him as a suspect. I will ask John Smith myself, because he's actually always been forthcoming and truthful and completely transparent about everything. I mean, him and James Renner both. Probably the only two people in the case that have been. Like Julie says, everyone should be looked at. Again, that's very interesting, Bill Rausch. Everyone should be looked at. So he's admitting that he himself should be looked at. And yet he doesn't want to take a polygraph. Very interesting. There's an interesting response on the blog here from Firinne. Farine says, all of this talk, but never a copy of a plane ticket. Leave request form, record of purchase, nothing. Now he's going on about he did what people asked as if that was ever the point. Nothing but inconsistencies from one end to the other. Mismatches in statements versus evidence, on. And endless gaslighting. John's the problem, you're the problem. Anybody who asks the most reasonable questions is the problem. Any talk about how what he did and said then doesn't add up is the problem. And if he isn't the one who's going to tell you it is, Aaron will. What an ongoing expletive show. Oh, and also, he won't hesitate to pull out the "I'm a vet, you're welcome" card either, which is a gigantic insult to vets, including the many in my own family who don't do this sort of thing. Not to mention that the answer to "you were her fiancé," you keep talking about how much you loved her and how totally distraught you were, but you never came back to New Hampshire, cannot rationally be, "oh yeah, maybe you should be investigated." Something is causing this late-breaking willingness to be out on social media all the time. What is it? The response to this by Linda is so well written. His mother seems a little too involved over the years. I didn't know he had a dad, but some reports indicate he was in the picture. That Red Cross phone call never made sense either. It seemed convenient. And of course, I've gone over that on the ping pong episode, and you can check that out on the Mindshock podcast. It seems like it definitely was not the Red Cross calling, and that was all a sham setup, as I have gone over. Another poster, Carmela, says this is some crazy stuff just because John Smith asked some hard questions that he does not want to answer. My question is, why won't he answer those questions if he has nothing to hide? Instead, he reverts to name-calling. Anonymous posted this. Well, here's a snapshot of the real Billy Boy. Talk about disgusting, accusing the one person who has been around from the beginning, spending 16 years of his life dedicated to figuring out what happened to Maura, interviewing people, attending the vigils, sharing info with Fred, investigating different angles. I always thought Billy's responses seemed too contrived on social media, but here, now we get an inside look of his condescending, blame-shifting ways. Oh, how very telling. It is very telling because we are seeing more of, I don't know if he was drinking the night that he went on these attacks, but it seemed like some of the facade faded away, and we can see a little bit more about what his accusers were talking about in how they described some of their interactions with Billy Rausch. Again, I'm not claiming to know whether anything is true or untrue, but again, we do have here a different side of Billy Rausch where he doesn't have that fake veneer of PR, that PR training as if he's talking to people who are just going to take on blind faith what he says as true and talking without actually saying anything. Sarah commented as well, I do not understand why Bill is so gosh darn angry. Why the venom? Why so upset? Does he know John personally? I don't understand what is going on with Twitter. It is so toxic and crazy. Why does everyone hate each other? Why do specific people hate James so much? I don't feel such intense feelings for the players in the case. It's hard to understand where the emotions come from, unless this is, again, getting triggered and trying to steer when someone is asking hard questions. What I don't get is why Bill was a silent ghost for almost 15 years and now is a foghorn on the case. If I were him, I literally wouldn't speak. I would be extremely low-key, especially with the legal troubles he's having. I wouldn't want to draw attention to myself. Yet he draws all the attention to himself, then accuses James of doing so. He twists words. If you read enough of how he replies to people and what he says, it's quite fascinating. The Twitter war is strange. If people say this kind of culture doesn't exist on other cases, why this one? That right there is a clue. And indeed it is. The hate for James is unreal and, in my view, unwarranted. He is the only one who just reports stuff and doesn't spew hate and vitriol at people who don't agree with him, but then do the exact thing to him. John, Tim, Lance, the list goes on. It's crazy. Linda responded, I have said that for years. It's like they're jealous of James, but I also agree about Bill. Something is wrong. The legal troubles makes no sense that he would be fixated on a tempestuous relationship that he had so many years ago. I mean, he was married with 2 kids, and now he wants to find this not exclusive girlfriend. They were not even engaged. I couldn't believe it when he started this post on the Maura Murray blog asking how everyone heard about Maura. What business is it of his? And the Aaron connection. Would someone tell me why the family sticks by him in light of all these accusations? It would sure be a red flag to me. Abe says, all of this just reinstates how much more Billy needs to be re-examined. None of his travel, leave, or actions before of, the day of, or after Maura went missing make any sense. He can't even answer simple questions. How was he able to get leave so quickly? It makes me wonder if he had leave planned and they were going to meet. He ends up meeting her and doing her harm, ... Megan responded, I have been wondering the same thing, if the leave was already planned for whatever reason. And I've gone over that possibility before on the Mindshock podcast. At this point, that makes the most sense. But if this is true, is it strange that he isn't saying that? Maybe it would expose lies that he has already told about leaving, or he doesn't want people to know where he had been planning to go. I do think that if his leave had been pre-planned, it had something to do with seeing Maura. I am just thinking maybe she did not want to see him. Do we know if she definitively left a letter for Billy in her room? And then, of course, we don't, because we don't know exactly what happened with the situation in her room. I've gone with that over that countless times. The other thing nobody talks about enough is how he talks to his parents. So his parents drive out in the middle of the night, a quarter of the way, a third or a quarter of the way across the country in the middle of the night over a DUI walkaway. I mean, how did they know Maura wasn't going to show up the night in a couple hours? Not only that, but Bill Rausch gets his mentor, old teacher from West Point, who takes off work with him and his spouse. Both take off work to drive over to look for a standard DUI walkaway within hours of the disappearance. And they go around interviewing neighbors over a DUI walkaway of a 21-year-old adult who, as far as anybody knows, could have been partying and would have just shown up the next day. And nobody finds that strange. I mean, that's one of the most mind-shocking things in the whole case. The McDonald's. But even his own parents. I mean, how many parents have made a quarter of a country drive over a DUI walkaway over someone's 21-year-old girlfriend? I mean, I wonder, can we find a single other case on this timeline? I'm not talking about if she doesn't show up for like a week or something more extreme and there's definitive evidence of some kind of foul play or anonymous tips that something went wrong. I'm talking about in this type of situations. How often do DUI walkaways happen? According to police, it's fairly often. And yet they're taking photos at the scene over a DUI walkaway? Because if she just went somewhere to sleep it off at a hotel or a friend's house, nobody knows. I mean, this is a 21-year-old. It's not like it, nobody knows. I mean, the police attempted to frame it as that. How many DUI walkaway vehicles get photographed as if they're a crime scene? And on top of that, the photographs never get released. How many state troopers drive around local businesses confiscating security footage the night of a DUI walkaway? I mean, again, the amount of elephants in the room here are more than any other case, and how desperate the steerers and the obfuscators are for no one to find any of this strange is very, very telling. So let's move on to Sharon Rausch. Another post by James Renner, November 20th, 2020. Sharon Rausch sent email threatening legal action to Helena Murray. So let me restate that. Sharon Rausch is threatening the family of a missing person, according to her engaged to be engaged type of fiancé. This is the engaged to be engaged fiance of her son. She's threatening legal action against that family. The incredibly distraught, frantic, emotional family of a missing person. So let me read this post here. Earlier this week, Billy Rausch took to Twitter to shame and publicly attack John Smith, a volunteer and PI who has worked closely with Maura's father, Fred, ever since Maura disappeared. It's been relentless. And behind the scenes, he continues to taunt Smith through DMs like this one. I'm praying for you, John, laughing and crying emoji. Last night, Billy's friend posted this email on Twitter in a further attempt to dox John Smith. So this is from Sharon Rausch to Helena Murray. Sadly, it has been brought to my attention that a member of this forum, who I will further only identify as a male-female pronoun, has violated Billy's, my son, and Maura's boyfriend, privacy by illegally obtaining Billy's cell phone records through his or her personal friend employed by Sprint. He or she personally informed me of the situation after requesting information from me regarding Billy's calls. I answered his or her questions to the best of my ability before I was aware that the questions were based on the illegal receipt of Billy's cell phone records. As many of you may know, Billy personally provided without subpoena to New Hampshire law enforcement both his cell phone records and Maura's cell phone records within 2-3 weeks after Maura's missing. Wait, it took 2 to 3 weeks to provide them? So he did not provide them in the initial interview when he arrived? Interesting. They were also shared with Fred and Helena and later with the Molly Bish private eyes working Maura's case. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the Molly Bish Mindshock episode, it is the most comprehensive analysis of the Molly Bish case and an ongoing series as well. Billy has nothing to hide. However, I am most appalled that now, in addition to being heartbroken over Maura's missing, being re-victimized in her missing with the excuse made by a stranger that she believes Billy has something to hide. I want all of you, as well as the person, to be advised that I will seek legal action against any persons, or group that in any way violates the privacy of Billy or any member of our family. I will also do whatever lies within my ability to assist any member of Maura's family to seek legal action, if their privacy is illegally violated. Words can never express the appreciation and gratitude for the countless numbers of you who have provided help in searching for Maura, including your words of support and encouragement. I know you will continue to provide your assistance and compassion in her tragic situation. I'm guessing she's excluding this John Smith from this appreciation and gratitude. I mean, who's put in more time than John Smith? We have discussed here many times that no one is above the law. Therefore, even the most passionate desire to help find Maura is no reason to break the law. At this time, I refuse to publicly name the affirmation defender, obviously she's talking about John Smith, nor will I respond to any private messages or emails. However, be assured if such time comes that Billy is contacted, or I learn that his phone information is or has been shared, I will not only share his name, but also the private messages that were shared between the two of us. That is right after I make an appointment with the law firm with which I was employed for 17 years. So now we know that Sharon worked at a law firm for 17 years. Interesting. I am sure that our attorneys will address this issue not only from a legal standpoint, but also from a personal one. It's getting personal. It takes a lot to make me angry, and this situation has done the trick. I am extremely angry, resulting in me taking protective measures for Billy, even if he doesn't need them. I no more see my anger abating than I foresee my forgetting about Maura. The bottom line is that Billy has suffered enough. You make the call. I will be out all afternoon, evening. Take care. So if he really has nothing to hide, then would this email even be necessary? And that's a very important question. Because if he has nothing to hide, then what difference does it make if these cell phone records are made public? If Billy really wants to be as transparent as he pretends to be and as forthcoming, what difference does it make? Now, again, I'm not defending. I don't know exactly how this information, like how this all came about. It would be interesting to see John Smith's take on this, because again, I mean, are we really going to trust Sharon's word? I mean, she's we can't really trust anybody's word. I mean, hard evidence is hard evidence. Just because somebody said something doesn't mean it's true. I mean, the steerers pretend it is, and the words of humans are somehow gospel truth, and humans can't be mistaken or lying. But that is not the case, of course. So continuing on with Renner's post here, it is an email sent by Billy's mother, Sharon, to the Murray family spokesperson, Helena Murray, prior to her death. It is in response to Sharon discovering that John Smith had obtained a copy of Billy and Maura's cell phone records. Smith says he got the records from Helena. In the email, Sharon threatens to sue everyone involved, stating, "I will seek legal action against any person, persons, or group that in any way violates the privacy of Billy or any other member of our family." She goes on to say, "Be assured that if such a time comes that Billy is contacted or I learn that this phone information has been shared, I will not only share the name but also the private messages that were shared between the two of us. That is, right after I make an appointment with the law firm which I was employed with for 17 years. I am sure our attorneys will address this issue not only from a legal standpoint but also from a personal one. It takes a lot to make me angry, and this situation has done the trick. I am extremely angry, resulting in me taking protective measures for Billy, even if he doesn't need them." But why would you take them if he doesn't need them? I don't know, that's kind of weird. She ends the message, "You make the call," smiley face. Those phone records eventually made their way onto the internet anyway and were accessed by the documentary crew and other private investigators. They're currently accessible through a subreddit that Billy's friend is involved with. The records revealed some interesting tidbits, such as Billy calling Maura's friend, Kate Markopoulos' dorm room and personal cell phone in an apparent attempt to locate Maura the day of her disappearance. And also to note how he had those numbers. Billy on a lengthy call with a former West Point professor at the moment of Maura's accident, or alleged accident, more of the staging, which Maura's might not have even been present for, in New Hampshire. Maura's call to the Salamones, or someone using Maura's cell phone, looking for a hotel condo with 2 bedrooms. Maura's call to a woman who investigated child abuse for the state of Massachusetts, or again, someone using Maura's phone. A strange gap of phone calls by Billy the weekend after Maura's disappearance, strange indeed. A call from Billy to a close friend after his last conversation with Maura, the day before her disappearance. This same friend is referenced extensively in the testimony of Billy's girlfriend during hearings regarding her protection order against him last year. Over the years, Sharon has spoken on behalf of her son and has traveled to D.C. to support him during hearings for his upcoming sex abuse trial, while his girlfriend was filling out a protection order with police claiming that Billy had choked her and called her Maura. Someone using Sharon's Facebook account began to like all her photos. The victim doesn't know if it was Sharon herself or Billy using his mother's account, but she believes whoever it was trying to intimidate her into keeping quiet. It was a tactic Billy used when she had stopped talking to him for a while, a way of saying he was still paying attention to her. And that's quite creepy on a lot of levels. So here is an email. He shared a screenshot, Sharon and John Smith. From Sharon, "John, thank you for your apology. I appreciate it, and I'm glad you see how necessary it is. I understand an obsessive personality, as I have learned to control mine over the last 25 plus years. The fact that you illegally obtained information regarding Billy really blew my mind. Therefore, it wasn't just the fact that you were questioning Billy's involvement, which in itself would have upset me tremendously. But why? If he's an objective PI, the significant other is the most likely. He would just be doing his objective due diligence. I mean, you don't see John Smith all alleging that Billy Rausch is the one responsible and that no other theories should be explored. He's not doing that. He's simply exercising Investigation 101, something a lot of law enforcement do not seem to be doing. Anyway, but also the manner in which you obtained his cell phone bill. I extend my sympathy for your medical condition. I am well acquainted with mental illness. There are several members of my extended families that have battled depression and breakdowns for years. Under the circumstances, both your mental health and the illegal action which you undertook, it is wise that you have decided to forego further investigation into Maura's missing." That is very, very telling. So it almost seems like Sharon is glad that John Smith is taking a break from the case. He's taken several. And because John Smith, one of the only people objectively and neutrally looking at every avenue, so she's thinking it's wise that he stop investigating. So she only wants the steers investigating, or those that she can control or manipulate or influence. And John Smith has made it clear that he's a man of integrity that will not be steered and that he will pursue all avenues. So she must be really happy that he's taken a break from the case. Again, very, very telling. Diane responded with this: Sharon is a very smart person, quick and sharp, but to say that it is wise that John Smith forego further investigation into Maura Murray's disappearance is quite a statement. Wow. John Smith, or someone using his moniker, responded, this is on the James Renner blog, I was just thinking the same thing about that line. John Smith forego further investigation into Maura Murray's disappearance. I just wish my mind was clearer back then. Unfortunately, it was clouded and my judgment was off. After reading these again, after 12 years of them just being a mere memory, until, thankfully, Billy Rausch and Erin Deborah Larkin brought them back into the light, they have truly opened my eyes. And that's another point. I don't think Erin Larkin realizes the constant shark jumping and obvious steering and obfuscation. The desperation underlying the steering and obfuscation has only caused more scrutiny to be brought into the areas that Billy Rausch and Erin Larkin want everyone looking away from. So it had the opposite effect, which is quite amusing in its own way. It is my belief that Sharon has been covering for her son, Bill Rausch, in one capacity or another for the past 16 years. These threats, and yes, I did say threats to Helena, the Murray family, and myself, and others, only solidify what I was thinking way back then in the early days. Those cell records were a huge indication and catalyst for the intense scrutiny that they were held to. Those records told a story back then, and the actions of the Rausch camp certainly show not only anger and rage, but the ability to use veiled threats to coerce others. And now, years later, those same cell records and threats have come to light and should indeed open the eyes to the reader that there is much more than meets the eye behind Bill Rausch, his family, and possible friends. The recent insertion of Bill Rausch back into the case after all these years is all about timing. His legal issues have caused him to use Maura Murray as a pawn in his sick, twisted game, whatever that is. It is obvious and absolutely outright disturbing, disgusting, and demented. The fact he uses this as part of his strategy to look good in the eyes of the unknowing is even more manipulative and should bring one to question. If Bill Rausch would do this, what else is he capable of, and what else has he lied about, and what else will he lie about? 16 years of searching for the truth. Whoever is responsible needs to be held accountable, and it doesn't matter who that is. It is time for truth, it is time for justice, and it is time to stop this never-ending madness. Sincerely, John Smith. A follow-up post here on the blog, November 29th, 2020, by James Renner. Who is Peabody? Has the Rausch family steered the online narrative in the Maura Murray case from the beginning? And I thought it was known that Sharon Rausch was Peabody. I've discussed this even in earlier episodes of the Mindshock podcast. It was kind of accepted by all of the longtime members of the online community. I don't know if there was ever hard 100% proof, but it was just talked about as if it was an open fact for many years now. Again, I'm not sure how this was all determined, but that's how it was talked about. So here's the post. Earlier this week, a letter from Sharon Rausch to the Murray family was posted online. In it, Sharon threatens to sue. The letter was sent years ago after the cell phone records of Billy Rausch and Maura Murray were made public. Astute readers noticed an interesting turn of phrase that Sharon used in the letter. Billy has nothing to hide. However, I am most appalled that he is now, in addition to being heartbroken over Maura's missing, being re-victimized in her missing. Maura's missing. It's a weird way to talk about what happened to Maura Murray. Not Maura's disappearance or Maura going missing. It's not just something people normally say. It's kind of a linguistic tick. Sharon does it again in a diary post here. And this is a post October 2nd, 2005. The All-American Girl, Part 3. where Sharon explains the events surrounding the broken promises. It has been 18 months, and yet we still have no clue why Maura chose to take a week off school, drive a car that she knew was not mechanically sound, or as we've learned, not even insured to drive, and head to New Hampshire. We do know that she attempted to call my son Billy the afternoon of her missing. Because she could not reach him, she emailed him. She made no mention of the trip. Of course, we think this would be like her. She would not want him worried about her traveling alone in a car with mechanical problems. There were 2 calls made on her cell phone before she left UMass that confirmed that she was attempting to find a room in the Vermont-New Hampshire area. It's interesting, that confirm. How does that confirm? Those 2, she even says 2 calls made on her cell phone before she left. Is this another Freudian slip by Sharon Rausch? Because she doesn't say Maura made these calls. There were 2 calls made on her cell phone. Interesting. On Sunday, she also had promised to call her father the evening of her missing. So that she said that twice there. We believe she had every intention to follow through on this promise because duplicate copies of insurance forms were found in her car. And again, just to point out, unlike every other missing persons case ever, nothing can be nailed down here, not even where those copies of insurance forms came from. And I've discussed those on previous episodes. Nothing in this case can be corroborated. So she goes on here, the scheduled phone call with her father was for him to assist her. She had to have either picked them up from the Hadley, Massachusetts police station regarding an auto accident she had on Saturday, February 7th, 2004, or downloaded them online, although supposedly there was no printer in her room. It is not unusual that she did not attempt to call Fred at work and tell him of her plans. He is a nuclear medicine technician and can take neither personal calls at work nor cell phone calls. Maura's broken promises to her dad and to Billy lead me to believe that Maura has been harmed. So yeah, interesting possible Freudian slips there. Okay, back to the article. And this linguistic tick is used by one of the oldest trolls to stalk the Maura Murray online message boards, an avatar named Peabody. Peabody's first post appeared on the Web Sleuths message boards on December 29th, 2004, less than a year after Maura disappeared. It's a link to a poll about the top news stories of that year, asking readers to help get Maura's story to the top. And there's a post here. Peabody, I am confused. In one post, you stated that you are Maura's future mother-in-law. Now you are stating that you received permission to copy and paste a letter by the future mother-in-law. Is that you or not? Peabody said, my prayers are certainly with you. I have never forgotten about Joanna's missing, partly because, as with Maura Murray, my future daughter-in-law, there have been no leads. I did not recall Joanna went missing on Maura's birthday, this May 4th. Maura will be 23. Not would have been, Maura will be. Interesting. I will be in earnest prayer for answers regarding both young women as well as for your comfort and healing. God bless you and watch over you, Peabody. Huh. Very interesting. So it looks like she did explicitly state that she was Maura's future mother-in-law. Huh. I actually did not know about that. May 4th is Maura's birthday, and in 2005, Peabody posted this message about another woman who went missing that day. Other posters immediately noticed that Peabody had apparently outed herself as Billy's mother, but then Peabody walked it back and clarified, insisting that they were actually Sharon's friend and just reposting the message from another site. The old, I have a friend trick. I mean, maybe it's true. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's just interesting that as soon as she got called on it, and also, if you were gonna post something like that, wouldn't you state, I'm the friend and this is what she wanted everybody to know and post it? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking here. So in her response, she said, Sharon is Maura's future mother-in-law. I, Peabody, received permission to post here on Web Sleuths Sharon's touching remarks concerning Maura's birthday. Her remarks were posted in the wee hours of the morning on MauraMurray.com. Hope this clears up the confusion. If not, let me know, and I will do my best to make it clear. Now that's kind of weird. Hope that clears up the confusion. So she's clearly stating she got permission to post and that Sharon is not her. If not, let me know and I will do my best to make it clear. I don't know. That strikes me as slightly weird. And another post here. After receiving a private email pointing out what you so clearly see, I need to explain. I now see what you mean. I certainly was in the depth of a deep brain fog during that post. I was saying that I was surprised that I did not recall that Joanna went missing on Maura's birthday. I helped Sharon, Maura's future mother-in-law. That's also a weird thing to say. That's just a weird thing to say. Maura's future mother-in-law. Billy Rausch's mother, Maura's boyfriend's mom. I don't know. Plan and organize last year's Circle of Hope for Maura and on her birthday, and my post should have referred to Sharon as being my friend and Maura's mother-in-law. My post should have referred. I mean, this whole thing is weird. It's got a bunch of spin on it. I don't know. Even if it's not Sharon, it's definitely some trollish phrasing here. Just really bizarre. They weren't even engaged. Engaged to be engaged is not engaged, and has there ever been any verification that they were even engaged to be engaged? Many people close to Maura said that their relationship was not good, and that people didn't like Billy. Anyway, Peabody also uses Sharon's odd turn of phrase, Maura's missing, instead of Maura's disappearance throughout their posts. And a couple more posts here. Maura's missing. All right. Peabody was active on Maura's web sleuth message board for years, supporting Billy Rausch and sometimes trying to attack the credibility of my book. But in recent weeks, a new Twitter account has been trolling people who raised questions about the calls Billy made during Maura's disappearance, and they have the same linguistic tick. And she's talking about a steerer known as Carlo DeWitt, who, again, with these steers and obfuscators, they intentionally do not use, or they're that dumb or they're playing that stupid. There's no logic or reason to any of their replies. They just blindly back Billy Rausch. And the same phrasing here, Maura's missing. I mean, it's so, it's so painfully obvious that this Carlo DeWitt guy is, or whoever it is, if it's Sharon, if it's Billy, it could be Billy. The steering and obfuscation is incredibly obvious. I actually thought it was most likely either Billy Rausch or one of his friends as well, just in how obviously they steer. So again, with the psychological projection, one of the tweets where you people are psychic mind readers. We have bits and pieces, yet you know Sharon's motives and feelings. But then again, they pretend to know all these other people's motives and feelings. Very, very hypocritical and funny. Her past posts on the Family Forum interviews and TV appearance are at complete odds with your conjecture. You even cite her notes where she supports KM. And this is now James Renner's post here. The KM Carlo posted about there is short for Kathleen Murray, whom Sharon threw under the bus after Kathleen was questioned by police way back in 2004. At issue was why Maura suffered a breakdown while working the security desk a few days before her disappearance. What prompted the breakdown? Police thought it may have been a call from her sister Kathleen. And again, unlike every other case ever, we don't even have any solid information on that breakdown, that the call could have been to the security desk line, not her cell phone, and then the ever-changing timeline of even the breakdown. So I've gone over that many times on the Mindshock podcast, yet the steers and obfuscators want to pretend that the official, so-called official timeline peddled is magically correct and everybody should take it on blind faith, no evidence required. In a diary post by Sharon Rausch, she talks about the issues she had with Kathleen early on. Quote, Kathleen always insisted that she never talked to Maura at that time. The New Hampshire police emphatically told Kathleen they knew better and told the media that the family was withholding information. In fact, when Maura's cell phone bill arrived, Maura's cell phone bill was paid by Billy and or her family and sent to them. It showed the last call during the time in question to be Thursday, February 5th at approximately 10 p.m. for 20 minutes to Kathleen. Except what Sharon knew at the time, and nobody else did until her son's phone records were released online, was that Kathleen was not the last person to speak with Maura Murray before her breakdown. She spoke to Billy around midnight and just prior to when her supervisor found her in a catatonic state. And that actually also might not be true, because if that was closer to 1 a.m., then that would have been the desk line call. I don't know why James Renner didn't mention that there, but here's Carlo talking about the same issue. I read this to mean SR believed Kathleen, that SR was supporting Kathleen because police were insisting she was not being honest. Many early newspaper accounts support this view. And yes, before you point it out again, we know you believe yourself to be of superior intelligence. So again, the very insecure, triggered posts by Carlo DeWitt. Billy Rausch himself also uses fake social media accounts to steer the narrative in his girlfriend's disappearance. When his girlfriend sought a restraining order last year, it was revealed that Billy was using fake Twitter and Reddit accounts to dox people who were critical of him, and we went over that as well. What does it all mean? I'm not sure, but I have never heard of something like this in a missing persons case to date. At best, it's weird. At worst, it's a concerted and organized attempt to point the investigation a certain way. Credit is due to a few sleuths who figured this all out, including Miss Gags. Tim and Lance discussed the Peabody oddities on their Patreon episode. Okay, another follow-up post here, December 10th, 2020, by James Renner. Twitter account linked to Rausch family defamed his mistress as she sought a restraining order. It's been a busy week within the community that surrounds the Maura Murray mystery. Earlier this week, Audio Boom decided to begin removing Aaron Larkin's podcast due to repeated instances of defamation and doxing of a rape victim. Over on Missing Maura Murray, Lance and Tim spoke about the weirdness of what's been going on as well. Meanwhile, internet sleuths have been combing through old posts of a Twitter account named Carlo DeWitt after our post last week that uncovered how a well-known internet troll shares a linguistic tick with Billy Rausch's mother, Sharon Rausch. Also, let's not forget, James Renner was the one who called out Billy Rausch's possible fake account, the Joe Friday or DJ Joe Friday or DS Joe Friday, whatever it was. As soon as James Renner said hi Bill or hi Billy, that account never posted again on Reddit. Very amusing. Since the post, Carlo's account has gone private. What a coincidence! Prior to the switch, people found several tweets that defamed Billy's mistress, who was awarded a restraining order after testifying that Billy choked her and called her Maura. Whoever was behind that account says Billy's mistress committed perjury and was caught lying, all untrue accusations. So again, Carlo DeWitt with the psychological projection earlier, calling other people psychic mind readers and knowing other people's motivations while spewing this pretend knowledge that all these other, how would they know if they were lying if they weren't in the room with this woman and Billy Rausch? Again, very telling how these steers operate. In fact, the judge in the case required Billy to take 22 domestic violence classes. According to Billy's victims, someone using Sharon Rausch's Facebook account sent her dozens of unwanted notifications as she was filling out her report with police. And that's really creepy. Like, she's at the police station filling out forms. Someone informs Bill and or Sharon and or whoever's using their accounts, Aaron, whoever, that this alleged victim is giving her report at the station, and they start blowing up her phone with notifications by liking photos so she sees and feels intimidated by Sharon Rausch. Billy's wife finalized a divorce on May 12th last year. And there's a couple of highly triggered posts of Carlo DeWitt trying to make these semantics arguments on what's defined as sexual assault or DC sex crimes and pretending to know that all these people are lying. I'm not going to go over all of them. Quite obvious. All right, so let me move on to the astute researchers on the Mindshock subreddit regarding all of this. I'll read a couple of posts here. It seems as if Sharon was trying to oversell how great the Maura-Bill Rausch relationship was at the time. We can all see what clues Bill Rausch's phone records hold. I wonder what Sharon's phone might hold. Just a thought here, but I wonder if Sharon wasn't so much concerned about Billy Rausch's phone's record, but perhaps someone finding out the contents and subject matter of what he was discussing in these calls. She seemed to easily dismiss the upsetting call Thursday night by essentially pinning it on Kathy. After all, Supervisor Karen claimed that Sharon contacted her early on to discuss Maura and her son. Yeah, she got ahead of the narrative earlier, and that's a very interesting point, that Sharon Rausch was highly interested in Karen Mayotte and the whole Thursday night breakdown, which is quite interesting because Fred Murray said none of that stuff mattered, and the only thing that matters is what happened in Haverhill. Yet Sharon Rausch seems to have a completely different idea. Another poster said this. Also, I believe that law enforcement made comments that Maura was in New Hampshire because of her boyfriend. They never elaborated on this, and her family claims they don't know why she was in New Hampshire, but Kathleen did comment that Maura's relationship with Bill Rausch was rocky. My guess is Bill Rausch was breaking up with Maura because he met his soon-to-be wife at the McDonald's wedding. Coincidentally, the same McDonald's who took off work and drove a bunch of hours over to New Hampshire over a DUI walkaway and started interviewing neighbors over a DUI walkaway. Very interesting. Maura did not take this well. Who knows when he told her? Maybe after the holidays. Billy Rausch will never admit this ever, and his mother is deflecting all blame from her son from day one. May explain why the McDonald's went to New Hampshire. They felt guilty. That's actually one of the first theories I've ever heard that might possibly make a little bit of sense. Let's say Bill Rausch blames himself for Maura's going missing. Let's say that's true. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to tell because it seems just from the frantic calls, it might be more likely that Maura found out about some kind of other relationship Billy Rausch was having. Whether or not Bill Rausch planned to break up with her or not, Maura might have found out something. Billy Rausch was frantically calling to try to, I don't know, either lie about it or whatever, but it wasn't working and she wasn't trusting him, whatever the case may be. And then maybe they really did feel that Maura went up there to harm herself. Maybe that came from Bill Rausch and he told Fred Murray that. Maybe he really believed it. Maybe he felt guilty and then he tried to turn into the good guy because maybe someone told Bill Rausch that in retaliation, Maura was maybe seeing some other guy who might have been in with a bad crowd. And maybe Billy Rausch was trying to save her, trying to help her. But now, again, as I've mentioned before, in a lot of cases, people will do a lot of stuff to protect their ego. Even if they're not responsible for whatever crime is at hand, they don't want to look bad. They will cover up quite a lot of stuff to not look bad, even if they weren't responsible. So let's say something happened to Maura and Billy Rausch doesn't want to look bad because he instigated that in some kind of capacity and the McDonald's knew about it. Why is he on the phone with McDonald that night? And then they drive out there and start interviewing neighbors. It's just really weird. Again, how many other missing persons cases do people make these treks in the middle of the night over DUI walkaways and then start interviewing neighbors? I mean, it's just kind of, it's weird. And it's very telling the attitude of people who think that it's completely normal. It's just really bizarre. Another response here, yes, and on the Oxygen show, I'll bet because of editing, neither of Maura's sisters seem to have much good to say about Bill Rausch. Even when his West Point friend Sam was on the Tim and Lance podcast years ago, he said multiple times that the Maura-Bill Rausch relationship was, quote, on the rocks. That doesn't sound like engaged to be engaged, does it? Plus, Sharon claims Bill Rausch was interrogated when they all arrived at Haverhill Police Department Wednesday night. Maybe it was some sort of guilt over a breakup, but when she really did go missing, they needed to paint the all-happy narrative. Engaged to be engaged sounds a lot better on the surface than what might really have been going on. Actually, whoa. It's time for a mind shock. I don't know how I missed this when I was going over it before. So the Bob, real name Bob, who was going by Sam on the Tim and Lance podcast, apparently Bob met Julie and Maura at a Cape Cod party. And his business was 5 miles from Pier 4, where it was said the Saturn allegedly was seen on the weekend before she disappeared, which is an interesting point. And I've gone over that quite a few times, and James Renner initially reported that. It couldn't be 100% corroborated, and then it kind of disappeared. It fell by the wayside. But it always did seem like there might have been something to that, particularly when UMass refuses to release any security footage from the parking lots. So we don't even know if the Saturn was on campus. Was the Saturn even at UMass? Allegedly, when Maura took it, allegedly, and she allegedly left UMass to make it to New Hampshire. So is there more than meets the eye to this other Bob, who went by Sam? which is also kind of weird. He's appearing on behalf of Billy Rausch. That's also weird. And so, just to continue the post here, if Maura was made to disappear, then there has to be a big motive to do so and a pre-plan it out. ... Another poster says, once again, what kind of friend agrees to go on a podcast under an alias and then appear in person on a national television show under their real name to vouch for another guy? Other posters had this response: anything said by him would be considered hearsay, irrelevant. Funny, he went on Tim and Lance during the filming of Oxygen, as both were in 2017. Obviously, Tim and Lance knew who he was, but maybe Art hadn't decided if they were going to keep that interview in the show or cut to the editing floor. This interview was included for the broadcast show, yet Mike Lavoie's interview about the toe was left to the side as a bonus clip. If I remember correctly, Art, or maybe it was Maggie Freeling, said there are hundreds of hours of never seen footage and that only around 6 hours were cut to make the show. It was cut down to 6 hours to make the show. Obviously, someone thought Bob's interview was important enough for the official broadcast, which is weird. And what's the harm in releasing all of those unreleased hours? I mean, are they that terrified that there are more clues in there? They're that terrified? And then, of course, Bill Rausch on Twitter said he was overseas, which is why he didn't go back to search for Maura. Yet someone responded here, he didn't ship to Iraq until the summer of '05. So he was at Fort Sill for well over a year with no other trips to New England. I don't know if that's been verified, that he was at Fort Sill the whole time. Obviously, he did not go back to New England for the searches. Another post here on Sharon. Wow, what a giant catfishing game it is indeed. Much of this seems very clear now. Rereading these posts on Web Sleuths make it very obvious what Peabody was doing. Add in Sharon working for a law office for almost 20 years and being out front all over the place from the get-go, the obfuscation is clear as day. Losing all the notes, yet having them appear randomly, especially recently, seems a concerted effort to hold the fort. And then, of course, Sharon had all these journal entries, and supposedly she lost the originals while traveling. Again, I mean, I don't know. It seems, again, when we're dealing with Sharon, it seems kind of suspicious. From the outset, if nothing else was suspicious about Sharon, you could maybe say that might be true. And maybe it's still true, but it's kind of hard to take any of that on faith, especially when what we do have of some of the notes that allegedly were copied somehow, they're really bizarre as well. Besides, she was so diligent, most people assumed she was Maura's own mother. In fact, how often did anyone see Maura's mother try to control all the info? It's a pretty good point as well. Holding Kathleen responsible for the last call when she spoke with Billy later, yet carried on as though it didn't happen, going on all the TV shows, and all is bizarre. The kicker is heading out from Ohio overnight to get to New Hampshire over a long-distance girlfriend with a DWI walkaway takes the case. And some more posts here. There are 2 emails supposedly from Maura to friends in December '03 and January '04. Does anyone know the source of these emails and who published them? The reason I ask is there seems to be a dispute as to some email found on boxes in her dorm following her disappearance. Sharon is said to have contacted Maura's security supervisor via email early on, so I have to wonder if Sharon Rausch or Billy Rausch had some sort of access to her email as they did her phone record. So if these are control freak individuals, like they appear to be, again, whether they're the good guys or the bad guys, I'm not saying they're the bad guys. If they're control freak individuals and they're the good guys, I mean, they could use those powers for good, I suppose. But do we have irrefutable proof that they did not have access to her email? I mean, how many boyfriends and girlfriends know each other's passwords either to the knowledge of the other or not? Because sometimes they know each other's password and it's no secret. Sometimes it is a secret that one knows the other's password or both know each other's passwords, but they don't let the other one know. Again, I don't know how silly the steers and obfuscators are for thinking that that's outside the realm of possibility, and that all of these emails or phone calls made from people's phones need to be taken as gospel on blind faith without 100% verification. A response here, which of course leads to another person potentially sending emails from afar while appearing that they came from Maura herself. A dangerous, slippery slope. Interesting post here. It would be a slippery slope indeed, but a very narrowed one in my opinion. Honestly, who would even be sending out emails from afar if not Maura prior to her disappearance? Who would know her Hanson friends? Whose phone plan was she on? Who contacted her work supervisor via email? Who claimed they found an email on a dorm room box? Who claimed they received an email from her not wanting to talk on Monday, February 9th? And another interesting point here, I've discussed this several times on the Silent UMass episodes as well as other episodes. If someone was making it look like Maura was running away to disappear because something else happened, regardless of what it was, maybe there was some kind of an accident and she was killed accidentally. Either through a party, maybe let's say Billy Rausch has upset her so much. Let's say she had an alcohol overdose. Let's say, or someone else maybe roofied her or something that resulted in an accidental death. They weren't trying to kill her, but she somehow died accidentally. They were trying to cover it up. How would this be done? I mean, I don't know at what point. I don't have a timeline here. I'm just thinking out loud, because if someone has her phone and her email, they would do all these things, but maybe they didn't know about the alarm that went off in her room. So if they knew all these things, and supposedly she had a tutoring appointment that she didn't show up for. So even with control freaks, there would be certain details that they missed. Nobody's perfect. Are these the details? Something to ponder. A response here: with Billy Rausch's background at West Point Army and his expertise in certain areas, what would the odds be that he could hack into a cell phone on his own plan and or be able to hack into her computer email? Possible question mark. But here's the thing. Would he really need to be able to hack if he knew her password? I don't know. Someone else responded here: if we're to believe Billy Rausch's commanding officer say that if he took the leave, he didn't have any more time if an emergency happened within a year's time. That's kind of interesting. So that means the DUI walkaway would trump any other type of emergency if he were to get leave for it. Was that the conditions he got leave under? A response here: I assume in the military, like a lot of companies, a person can go in the hole as far as their PTO time is considered at the beginning of a new year. Then as time goes on, get back to square one and start gaining time off again. This could be the reason he never came back to search in 2004. The main oddity is explaining the circumstance to a commanding officer. On the surface, the story is a bit flimsy. You haven't spoken to a long-distance girlfriend in days, and her car was found abandoned. There could be multitudes of reasons why this is the case. No one knew where she was. If the car had been stolen, if another person, family, friend, co-worker, had used the car. So many issues for any commander to say no. And we should do a poll. We should do a poll of military commanders. If there's a DUI walkaway, would leave be granted for a 21-year-old possibly having a rocky relationship with a boyfriend? Would emergency leave be granted? Just an interesting poll. Even if there was an abduction with blood spatter and a crime scene, it still doesn't allow anyone to let an officer take emergency leave until further notice. If there was a death in a body, a commander could still not allow an officer to go to the funeral if they were hardcore, if it wasn't an immediate family member or wife. Could they have allowed him to go? Sure. Did Billy Rausch give his commanders extra info to ease this along? Very possible. Another post here: I don't have any opinion of Billy Rausch either way. What I still can't wrap my head around is what exactly he told his parents that was so drastic it convinced them to drop what they were doing Wednesday and make a 10-plus hour drive from Ohio to New Hampshire, and then get Bob McDonald to leave from his teaching position to join them. And then, of course, Bob McDonald and his wife as well. I still have not heard a reasonable explanation for these actions over what was first said to be a simple DWI runaway. And it's also telling that Billy Rausch never answers these questions. He never even addresses that. It's just funny. A response, yes, that's very true. It doesn't add up that Maura's own father took it less seriously than Bill, his folks, and his friends. What also doesn't add up for me about Bill is that according to Renner, just months after Maura vanished, he was already choking a woman and calling her Maura. How could he already have a fantasy about that? It is very odd. We have all this access to Billy now, yet I haven't seen anyone ask him about the choking. I'd still like to know what Billy Rausch was interrogated over when he arrived at Haverhill Police Department Wednesday night. Response here, I think any competent police officer would be highly curious why an enlisted Army officer 1,700 miles away, not related to Maura, is getting emergency leave to fly to New England over a DWI walkaway with no sign of a crime, and then with emails sent that Maura would be out for a week. No matter how it's spun, it doesn't add up. Anyone can say they cared so much, but the actions don't match, especially since Julie didn't even get leave for another week or two. And that's her own sister. Another post here. It seems to me like Sharon cherry-picked certain phone calls Billy Rausch made early on to fit a narrative. For instance, she kind of blamed Kathleen for the upsetting Thursday night call, yet made no mention of the call between Billy Rausch and Maura later on at 12:07 a.m. that could have been closer to the breakdown. Then there's the whole whimpering message Billy Rausch supposedly received, but quickly deleted. The same might be said for the call with Bob McDonald Monday night. McDonald claims Maura was not discussed in the call. Who believes that? ? I don't think Sharon anticipated those phone records ever being released because she knew if they ever were, it would be pretty easy for anyone to point out some of the oddities in them, such as Billy Rausch calling Kate Markopoulos on Monday and Tuesday. I mean, the guy made calls almost non-stop for nearly 2.5 days straight at all hours, Monday into Wednesday. And that was definitely going to stand out to anyone seeing the records. And then, of course, the long pause of no phone activity at all. And we've discussed that in the past as well. Some more posts about Peabody, aka Sharon Rausch here. I was surprised that she was the lead researcher for almost 20 years at a law office. Billy Rausch spoke about her as being a homemaker mom. With the Peabody account and taking in all her words involvement since day one, her extremely quick arrival to New Hampshire from 12 plus hours away over a DWI walkaway, all seem far stranger than previously imagined in my opinion. Also, I brought up that Bill Rausch Sr. would be an interesting interview because he seems to have been deathly silent on all of this. Another brain fingerprint scan, perhaps. I mean, I don't think any of these people will agree to this brain fingerprint scan, but Bill Rausch, his mother, his father, a lot of the law enforcement, I mean, Chuck West. I mean, a lot of these individuals, it would clear up a lot of things. Rick Forcier even though, just even the sighting that he saw of an individual, I don't think he even said it was female. He saw some kind of hooded figure. I mean, all of this information is highly suspect. I mean, we need police dispatchers, all the tow guys. I mean, the fire department. If everyone that's still around would be brain fingerprint scanned, I think this case could be solved. I really do. Another post here, when Fred and Sharon both appeared on the Montel show in late 2004, neither blinked when Sharon was introduced as the mother of Maura's fiancé.
Please welcome Sharon to the show. Sharon, you were Maura's Maura's fiance's mom.
Yes.
How's your son doing with this?
He says he's doing well, but, he's just like Fred. He just faces one day at a time and fears the worst and hopes for the best.
Well, you know what?
Perhaps by this time, the whole engaged to be engaged narrative was so well ingrained that it just stuck as part of the story. It's strange because when Billy Rausch's friend, Bob, aka Sam, was on the Missing Maura Murray podcast a while back, he referred to Maura and Billy Rausch's relationship being, quote, on the rocks multiple times. and that Billy Rausch was calling Kate Markopoulos because Maura wasn't answering his calls. Or even still, again, can we presume that Maura didn't have her phone and she was not able to answer his calls? Because again, if it's not the significant other that's responsible for a female's disappearance, it's an acquaintance or friend. So again, how many times has someone been killed over even just ego, not even money, just ego? Even the first few times Billy Rausch and Fred were on the local news, they both spoke as if Maura had run away and that it would be better if she came back to them. And it would also be interesting to know what Billy Rausch told Fred Murray in those early days.
I love you, Maura. I miss you so much, honestly, you know that. And the sooner that I get to see you and hear you again, you know, honestly, better. So please, kid, if you're listening to me, we can just bang away at this stuff the same as we do all the time until we fix it.
Another post here. If his relationship with Maura was so great, did Billy Rausch really need to get his parents and the McDonald's involved so quickly because she wasn't answering his calls and her junk car was found abandoned on some road in New Hampshire? I mean, there's a couple other issues here. Supposedly, Sharon said that she was with Billy Rausch when Billy Rausch was picking out a ring near Christmas 2003. I don't know if she states if that ring was for Maura or not, but let's say it was. Did Billy Rausch plan to give her the ring that Valentine's Day that never happened? Was the emergency leave already arranged for that to happen? And then did something else happen? What does Billy Rausch really know? I mean, is it possible, let's say a certain circle of friends at UMass were responsible for harming Maura, is it possible they tricked Billy Rausch into believing they weren't? And they made up some kind of cheating narrative. Billy Rausch believed it, and Billy Rausch is the patsy here, and they're still playing him. No, I'm not saying it's Aaron Larkin or Kate Markopoulos or Sarah Alfieri. Perhaps it's a different circle of friends, but we don't know. I'm just throwing out theories there. Is it possible Billy Rausch is still the good guy here and he's the one that got played? I don't know. If he's as narcissistic as some people say, would he be open to the possibility that he got played, or would he be in such strong denial and assume his intelligence was too great to be played, especially with his psychological operations training? Would Dunning-Kruger play such a role that it wouldn't allow him to even consider the fact that he got played, so he just keeps up appearances? Again, I'm just spitballing here, but perhaps Billy Rausch really is the good guy. I don't know. And if his mother also bought into the narrative, then she would know that Billy Rausch is innocent, and she's just trying to protect her son, and she was also hoodwinked, although she did make that statement that something happened at UMass and her Amherst friends know. So did Sharon Rausch, are these not Freudian slips? Is it a 50-50? Because she's got two goals here. So protecting her son, but also finding the truth if she really does believe her son is innocent, and she's protecting him because she believes he's innocent, and maybe he really is. So she's still going to protect him, whether he's innocent or not, possibly. I mean, who knows? Maybe she wouldn't if she thought he was guilty. I don't know. But let's just assume that she's the kind of mother that would protect her son no matter what. That still doesn't really tell us what the real truth is. So someone commented here, from what I found, the McDonald's were married April 2002. Bill Rausch was an usher in the wedding, according to McDonald. It would be interesting to find out when Billy Rausch married his future missus he met at the McDonald wedding. Because as late as 2009-2010's Disappeared documentary, Sharon was still playing up how great the Maura-Billy Rausch relationship was and that they talked of getting married. And in response to this, Billy Rausch was already back in Ohio in 2007 shucking for Obama door to door. Billy Rausch wasn't a part of the ID show, but Sharon was front and center. Great point. Okay, so that's interesting as well. So here, this is a Kelly Jolkowski Project Jason blog. So this is quotes from this blog. Before her disappearance on Monday, February 9, 2004, Maura was looking forward to receiving her engagement ring in the summer of 2004. Again, Sharon Rausch supposedly claimed she was with Billy when he was picking out the ring in December of 2003. So I guess he was planning to give it to her after or in the summer of 2004. But anyway, back to the article. Receiving her engagement ring in the summer of 2004, graduating from nursing school in May 2005, and getting married in the summer or fall of 2005. She had already arranged for a summer job beginning in June 2004 in a hospital in Oklahoma to be near her boyfriend, who is a lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Maura and my son Billy had plans to marry in September 2005 and to honeymoon in her favorite of all places, the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And again, we don't know if any of this is true, but this is what Sharon was saying. Billy Rausch was stated at Fort Sill with a possibility to put an X amount of years in the Army, which included being stationed overseas. If they were to wed and have a child at these times, it would mean Billy Rausch would be overseas for the youngest years of a child. Not that this doesn't happen, but it seems odd to make plans with the separation in mind. It's also kind of weird. Someone pointed out that the Montel show, which aired in late 2004, they listed Maura as being 23 years old and was going to graduate in the spring before she disappeared. Sharon nodded in agreement and responded that yes, Billy Rausch and Maura were engaged. It almost seems as if Sharon and company were trying to bump the timeline up a year to fit the narrative of Maura already being engaged, plans for a wedding, and moving to Oklahoma. So yeah, just the sheer amount of spin, regardless is the reason why the spin, we have to, we're getting dizzy here just from the sheer amount of spin. Not that the spin is nefarious, but just that the sheer amount of it is just crazy. It's mind-shocking. So a quote from Kate Markopoulos in James Renner's book about moving to Oklahoma, page 118, but she wasn't thrilled about moving. It was the middle of nowhere. She was going to get a job at a hospital. She was going to move because she loved him. End quote. It's only speculation, but perhaps things were going well between Maura and Billy Rausch during the 2003 holidays, but something changed by the time the new semester at UMass came around, and Billy Rausch and company had to play up the happier times rather than what might have been really going on. Another response here: from the fall semester up until New Year's, it seems Maura was in charge of her own happiness as far as hanging out with Rausch and his family. I mean, she herself went to Ohio, did Thanksgiving, went to New York for the basketball game near Christmas, and hung out with all of them. January seems to be a bit different for some reason. Did she feel boxed in with the AAA card and phone plan by Bill Rausch? Was Sharon overbearing to the point of diminishing Maura's own family? Did an unexpected pregnancy rear its head, causing more distance and confusion? Scarinza was all in on the pregnant angle for some reason. Did Maura realize the timing of it didn't match with being with Rausch? Let me say that again. Did Maura realize the timing of it didn't match with being with Rausch? Did she tell him in the days before disappearing? Would that explain all of his frantic calls? Now, that's an interesting theory. I don't believe we've discussed that on Mindshock. We've discussed almost every theory. If Maura was pregnant with a child that wasn't Billy's and she told him, how would he react? That's interesting to think about. A response to this: it had to be something drastic enough for Billy Rausch to get leave so fast and for his parents to drop what they were doing and head up from Ohio, followed by the McDonald's. If there was some sort of relationship issue, usually two adults want to work it out themselves, or it ends up working itself out in time without the interference of parents and professors. Fred heard about the Saturn and Maura on Tuesday, but waited until the next day to head to New Hampshire, and he was much closer in Connecticut, as was Kathleen in Massachusetts. This is in stark contrast to Billy Rausch and his parents swooping from Oklahoma to Ohio. And not to get all soap opera-ish, but I'm not saying this is true in any way. I'm just saying, what would the response be if, let's say, Maura told him that she was pregnant with Bob McDonald's child? How would that play out? Would that be enough frantic insanity to spin this whole thing? And what if Maura was planning to tell somebody? And then even more on the darker side of it, again, I'm not saying this is true in any way, but if Bob McDonald did not have a consensual encounter with Maura, how would that play out? I mean, this is all very mind shocking to consider. Again, I am not alleging any of this is true. I'm just putting many different theories up there. Any of these people could be the good guys. Any of these people could be the bad guys, or they could just be neutral parties on the sidelines. We don't know. Just making sense of these extreme reactions is very difficult. Another poster said this: I stated before that when Fred finally heard about the Saturn being found, it was around 5 p.m.-ish Tuesday. This was his car, and allegedly what Maura used on campus. Fred went to sleep. This isn't to find fault at all with Maura's dad, but it was almost 24 hours for Fred and Haverhill PD to finally talk to each other. No one was found with the Saturn. Now, maybe Fred knew something else here, but he went to sleep and he drove to New Hampshire the next morning. For him, this news wasn't any terrifying, ominous conclusion. More like, now I need to go get that expletive car. As involved of a parent Fred has always been, the man went to sleep after finding this out. Compare and contrast. Now, a couple factors. I mean, obviously, Fred isn't super young now, and he wasn't exactly a spring chicken even back then, but he was in fairly good shape. I mean, he ran every morning, supposedly, even at the time, even during the searches, he would go running, and then he would go do the searches for more. So he wasn't some fat, out-of-shape slob that couldn't be bothered. If he thought it was an emergency, he loved his daughter, he would have went there immediately. So what was he thinking? Was he not sure that Maura was the one who even drove the car? Did he think Maura might still be at UMass? Or did he think she was just whatever? She had a second accident. She didn't want to upset people. She just went to a hotel. She didn't want to get a DUI. Is that what he was thinking? Because obviously, if he really thought it was some emergency, he would have went immediately. I don't think anybody doubts that. So again, compare and contrast. Another poster, right, it doesn't sound anything Kathleen told him or anyone else for that matter made him drop what he was doing and head to New Hampshire right away Tuesday night. Yet here was Billy Rausch flying across the country and his parents making a nearly 12-hour drive from Ohio. Obviously was drastic enough for some reason. More posts on this. It seems hard to believe that Billy Rausch's parents made the drive from Ohio all the way to New Hampshire based on a whim of a phone call that Maura had been missing for about a day. I think more coordination had to go into that, such travel plans, arranging for time off of work, figuring out where they were going to stay once they arrived in New Hampshire, etc. It appears that they were all aware something was very wrong earlier than Fred might have known. Also, I think Sharon was trying very hard to almost oversell how great the Billy Rausch-Maura relationship was at the time she went missing, hence the pushing the engaged to be engaged narrative. Also, let's rewind back to 2004 here. Early 2004. This isn't the age of social media and 24-hour contact. I mean, I remember back then, you might have not been in touch with a family member for 1 or 2 or more days, particularly if someone's over 21. There was just less sense of urgency because there wasn't 24-hour contact. So that makes this even stranger at the speed that they all went out there. And that this mentor and his significant other are getting time off work to go interview his neighbors over a DUI walkaway. It just makes it that much crazier. It would be slightly less crazy today when constant contact is almost expected. Another post here, add that his mom went on the ID show 5 years later, and in 2009, after Billy Rausch had returned from his tour in Iraq in 2007, still continuing to set the stage and cement all the ideas she needed to put forth. So much so that people watching thought she was actually Maura's mother herself. Then this comment here is super strange in hindsight, and this is a clip from WMUR News.
And there's no way that she would ever put just the two most important people in her life that I'm aware of, her father and my son, through this nightmare. There's no way. Maura, we love you. We're never going to give up hope. Don't you give up hope. because we're going to find you and we're going to bring you home safe.
There's no way that she would ever put her, just the two people, the two most important people in her life that I'm aware of, her father and my son, through this nightmare. There's no way. The telltale signs of looking off to the left, closing one's eyes, etc., say much in this. Also, from a forensic college site, sometimes people who are not telling the truth may look to the left because they may be constructing answers or imagery in their head. Others may even actually completely close their eyes when telling a lie. Of course, this is not an exact science, may vary depending on different people. So let's examine her.
They searched with dogs, by air, and on foot. They've checked everything from bus logs to snow tracks, and now, after 10 days, officials say they have suspended the ground search for 21-year-old Maura Murray.
What we wanted to do was make sure that we had done everything twice, and wanted to be able to come, for instance, and say to the family, we have searched this area extensively, and we have a very good feeling that we've done everything that we can do to assure that she's not in the vicinity of the crash site.
Officials even went a step further when asked if they thought Murray left the scene of her January 9th car accident on her own.
At this point, I have no reason not to believe that.
But those close to Maura and her family say even if she left on her own, she would have gotten word home.
And there's no way that she would ever put her, just the two people, the two most important people in her life that I'm aware of, her father and my son, through this nightmare. There's no way.
Officials plan to continue doing background checks on Maura with the help of the FBI to try to establish her frame of mind prior to disappearing, but at this point there will be no further search of the area. As for Maura's family and friends, their search continues.
Maura, we love you. We're never going to give up hope. Don't you give up hope, because we're going to find you and we're going to bring you home safe.
Investigators say if they find any further evidence to support such action, they will go out and search that area again, but at this point they feel they have done all they can. In Haverhill, Kofi Jones, WMUR.
So that was February 20th, 2004, just a couple weeks after she went missing. Also note the news reporter stated January 9th as the date of disappearance, not February 9th. But anyway, Sharon Rausch definitely appears to be in PR mode. She's got this weird little tiny smirk. Again, Billy Rausch also had that in some interviews. If you haven't checked out the Mindshock Billy Rausch interviews, I did some body language micro-expression assessments.
Am I telling the story about my ex-girlfriend? Am I telling the story about my former girlfriend, my current girlfriend? It is difficult, but the fact still remains that right now she's not here, and it doesn't seem likely that she will ever be here. So
here on Sharon Rausch too, something seems off. I don't know what it is. Again, it could be innocent. It could be something where both Sharon and Billy got hoodwinked by certain people and they trusted them and they believed them, and there's just something weird in the background going on. That's the only thing I know for sure. There's something weird going on. There's something unsaid, okay? There's missing information. That doesn't mean anybody's the good guy or the bad guy. I don't have that information. It's impossible to determine, but it's weird. There's definitely some spin. And another poster responded here, she actually used the term spin once when referencing law enforcement. You don't try to provide spin unless you are trying to cover something up, said Sharon Rausch, mother of Maura Murray's boyfriend Billy Rausch of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. They never did a forensic study, Rausch said, and Lieutenant Scarinza is providing a lot of misinformation to the public, including that she ran away to a new life, she froze to death, she committed suicide. And that's interesting because you have different groups of narrative spinners. I mean, you have local law enforcement, state police, Sharon Rausch. There's just different directions of all these steers, and there's so much spin. I mean, everybody's got motion sickness now regarding this case. Another poster chimed in with this, I believe Sharon knows her son met someone else and it was getting serious between them and knows her son was trying to end his relationship with Maura. She doesn't want her son to be the cause of this whole thing, why Maura ran away. I believe Billy called Maura on Thursday to tell her he met someone else and plans on marrying her. He met his wife at the McDonald's wedding prior to February 2004. Maura's reaction was utter shock and despair, setting the stage for downward spiraling events Thursday on. I believe Sharon also made comments that Maura would put Bailey's in her coffee for breakfast and twisted tea for lunch and on from there, but not stating she drinks too much, just letting us know that she hits the booze in the morning and we can infer what we want. I mean, that's even more strange behavior. I mean, I haven't heard that talked about too much. That is really bizarre. This again takes the focus off her son or the fact that Maura was not a happy camper. Her father also knows Maura was not happy, but wants to maintain her image of being smart and in control of everything. Sometimes I think he forgets she was still a kid and probably Bill was her first serious relationship, which is a big deal when you are 21. Plus, add on a nursing school, it was too much for her to deal with. And because of all the strange goings on with the Saturn, I think she could have hit Vassy and nobody knew if he would live. This would have thrown her totally over the edge. Bill and Sharon may know nothing about Vassy, but I think Fred does. And again, maybe it wasn't her who hit. I mean, if she let someone else use her car, I mean, there's a lot of nice people who get taken advantage of. Just nice, good-hearted people, and they get taken advantage of. That's just the way that it is. I'm sure everyone out there knows at least one such person, if not themselves, who have been taken advantage of just for simply being nice. Loaning someone something regardless of what it is. Of course, the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished. Is it really out of the realm of possibility that Maura's kindness, someone just took advantage of it and it led to big problems? And we do have to keep in mind, she is 21 years old. Highly stressful situation. And she's already, before anything bad happens, again, when you have a schedule that's that overloaded, even without anything bad happening, just the sheer amount of stress, emotional and otherwise, and then you add other things on top of it, that's a recipe for disaster. And also, I mean, these comments by Sharon just reek of strangeness and spin. New Hampshire Union Leader, October 29, 2007. The Kahlua vodka and Bailey's Irish cream Maura reportedly brought with her would likely have been about a week's worth of the drinks Maura liked. Mudslides, Rausch said. When visiting the Rausch family in Marengo, Ohio, Maura would add Bailey's to her coffee in the morning and drink Mike's Hard Lemonade with lunch, she said. Maura and Billy always had their stash of alcohol because Rausch doesn't drink, but she said Maura didn't drink excessively. So Sharon is saying that her son doesn't drink, which is... I mean, actually, I'm not sure what she's trying to say there. Is the author here saying that Sharon Rausch is the one that doesn't drink? Or that Billy doesn't drink? Because we know Billy drinks. I mean, there's photos of him on social media early on partying and drinking. So I don't know. That's still a weird way to say it. And in rewatching the Disappeared episode, again, I recommend anybody interested in the case, particularly that's been following it recently, rewatch it, knowing everything we know now about how the steers and obfuscators operate. Sharon Rausch says a number of bizarre things, one of which is she did lie, but she was not a liar. Doesn't quite make sense.
Maura had sent an email to her nursing professors. I don't know word for word, but in it, she told them that she needed to be away for a week due to a death in the family. She did lie, but, Maura was not a liar. She did lie, but, Maura was not a liar.
But what I want to point attention to is the stark contrast of all of her Hanson high school friends. There just does not appear, I could be wrong again, I'm a fallible human, but there just doesn't appear to be deception. There does not appear to be any deception or deceptive micro-expressions or mannerisms in any of her Hanson high school friends. Whereas everybody else, I don't know. Kind of weird. Especially Sharon. Sharon also says that Billy called her after listening to the voicemail that was Maura, which is interesting.
Billy called frantic around 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And he says, Mom, he said, while I was going through security, I missed a call. And he said, I'm sure it was Maura.
The message basically, in and of itself, was just a woman breathing and then possibly a whimper or some sort of noise at the end, which we believe to be her.
He said there was some, really soft sobbing and shivering sounds and sniffing. And he said, I don't know what to do. He said, I called it back, and it says it's a prepaid calling card. Before Maura had her cell phone, she called Billy with a prepaid calling card. And when Maura was here for Thanksgiving in 2003, I gave her 2 prepaid calling cards. And so that's always, added to our belief that it's very likely that Maura made that very unusual call that Billy received that morning.
So that's interesting. So Sharon says that Billy calls her after he had received the message going through airport security. Sharon specifically states that Billy called her frantic around 7 a.m. on the morning of Wednesday the 11th. So Billy's cell has continuous calls from 5:05 right up to 7 a.m. There was a previous 2-hour break in calls between 2:50 and 4:50, roughly, of a possible flight window. But he also needed time to get leave from commanders, book a flight, and get a ride to the airport for all of this to occur. Then the next break for a flight would be between 7 a.m. and 9:46 a.m., allowing for a 2.5-hour flight somewhere. Yet, this doesn't jive if he called his mother. So where exactly was the whimper call? Looking at his cell records, he calls the Marengo landline before midnight for 4 minutes. Then a cell to his parents at 2:43 a.m. for 3 minutes. And how many parents of that age are randomly up at 2:43 a.m.? Then he calls the Ohio cell again at 5:26 a.m. for 9 minutes. Then he calls the Red Cross right back after 5:34 for 3 minutes. Then 2 1-minute calls to the Rausch cell line at 5:58 a.m., a cell to 6:03 a.m. for 1 minute, then the cell call at 6:05 a.m. for 4 minutes. Assuming it was this last call, and Sharon is in Eastern Standard Time for her 7 a.m. reference, then Billy is in Central Standard Time at 6 a.m., then is there time to explain the whimper call to his mother in 4 minutes? Or was this part of a tall tale that Sharon wanted everyone to follow? Anyone, is there time here for all this to happen as she says? And my response to this on the sub was this: time for a brain fingerprint scan for Billy and Sharon and Bill Sr. This isn't some unreliable polygraph. This is military tech that is used by government agencies because supposedly no one can beat it. Simply measures recognition responses. Doesn't matter if someone is trying to be deceptive or not. The brain either recognizes information or it does not. Bill Rausch must be familiar with it. If they really wanted to help the investigation, they sure could take a few hours out of a single day and put years of speculation, past and possibly future, to rest so everyone can concentrate on getting the case solved. Aaron Larkin, Kate Markopoulos, Sarah Alfieri could do that as well. Wouldn't count on any of this happening, though. However, the phone call timeline once again pops up curiosities. How many men in their 20s would call their mommy between 2 and 3 a.m. over girlfriend troubles? Let's pause and think about that for a moment. Let me say it again. How many men in their 20s would call their mommy between 2 and 3 a.m. over girlfriend troubles? A girlfriend over 21 as well. So obviously there are plenty of mama's boys who would call their mom all the time. But do people that age appreciate calls at that hour? Another response here, it's not just the call times, but the length of calls as well. For instance, Billy Rausch only has a few short minute calls to Marengo, Ohio on Tuesday when he supposedly found out about the Saturn and Maura. It seems to me it would take much more than a few short calls home to convince your parents to drop what they were doing and make a drive from Ohio to New England the very next day. One of the longest calls on the phone records is one that Billy Rausch makes to Marengo, Ohio for 29 minutes early Sunday afternoon, February 8th. Then, of course, he has the 34-minute call with McDonald Monday night. In my opinion, I think the coordination planning for Billy Rausch's entourage started much earlier than at any point Tuesday evening. Another response here, this could very well be. Also, when Sharon states that Billy Rausch calls her that Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. about the whimper call he got, one would think that would warrant a longer call to explain how important it could be or how upset he truly was. But all those calls were relatively short as well. Now, let me go over this again because I have not gone over this on the Mindshock podcast before. That's a very interesting point. Now, let's say you're a man in your 20s. You might have some girlfriend troubles with a girlfriend who's 21 years old. There's a possible DUI walkaway. If you call your parents up at 2:30, be like, oh yeah, by the way, my girlfriend's missing. Can you drive out there? It's only at 12 plus hours, middle of the night. Oh yeah, let's go. Yep, okay, see you there. Bye. How would a conversation play out like that? Like, what would you have to say to convince relatively elderly parents to just drive out a quarter of the country, between a quarter and a third of the way of the country, over a DUI walkaway? I mean, just think about that for a second. The steers and the obfuscators have a nothing to see here attitude about all these multiple elephants in the room, and they desperately expect others not to find any of this strange at all and not even investigate it. It's really bizarre. Another post here, with all the phone silence in the last few days, I've questioned that last call allegedly from Maura to Fred late Sunday night on her cell record, calling so late about what to do with insurance papers and police reports to her dad. Why at 11:30 p.m. when Fred has to get up early for work at his age even then? Makes no sense. It's the only actual last call with her voice that is mentioned in the 24 to 36 hours before she disappears. While Billy Rausch says that it took forever to be granted leave that evening and bouncing between commanders, etc., his parents allegedly had a long ride to come to New Hampshire over a DWI walkaway. Had I told this story while in college to my parents, they would probably verbally assault and attack me relentlessly. It would be insane. My parents were extremely caring, but they would not call out of their jobs and drive all through the night to meet up with me over this. Not a stone-cold chance in hell. Over a long-distance girlfriend after a week or so of no contact, and it wasn't even a week, then he supposedly spoke to her that Sunday morning. They would help and be very concerned. Overnight? No way. My response here, I'm sure you would have no problem getting a teacher mentor from your former school to take off work and come out with his wife either. Neither would anyone. Said mentor's wife would also personally interview neighbors surrounding the DUI walkaway. Doesn't everyone get their parents to drive a quarter of the way through a country in the middle of the night and their teacher mentor with his wife from his former school to take off work and make the drive as well over a DUI walkaway? Of an adult, no less? All scrambling quicker than the DUI walkaway's own father and sister. Nothing to see here. Response to my post, most say how caring and supporting it all was, but hindsight now shows it's very bizarre behavior, especially for one person, but for two other sets of couples, to shake up their work week over a DWI walkaway, even if law enforcement ran with some kind of suicidal theory, disrupting their DWI walkaway theory, Maura would have been located that evening as soon as possible and sent to a hospital, whether dead or alive. Because we do have to look at it from the other angle, too. Like, let's say Maura shows up the following day. Would they all be pissed that they just dropped everything? Like, what would she say? As like, well, I mean, it was only a day or two. I mean, was it really that big of a deal? Like, let's just say that because nobody knew where she was, allegedly. Because if it was a DUI walkaway, she would have showed up either the next day or the day after. So it wouldn't have been strange. So would they even say, oh, we're so pissed we had to make the drive overnight? She'd be like, well, why did you drive all the way out? It was only a day or two. Like, what's the big deal? A more in-depth timeline here by this very astute poster. Interesting on the cell records, that last landline call was at 11:14 p.m. late Tuesday evening near midnight. Then it was all cell. The rest of the calls Billy Rausch makes to his parents is on their cell plan, which also included Billy Rausch's sisters, with a Columbus exchange. He has a gap in calls early that morning and calls his parents' cell at 9:52 a.m., assuming this is his layover flight for about an hour plus. There is another gap later, then he must land in Connecticut around 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon, where allegedly his parents pick him up to head off to New Hampshire or wherever, or UMass with McDonald, whatever it was. For the parents to drive all the way there, they had to leave around 3 a.m., which looks about when Billy Rausch calls their cell at 2:43 a.m. for 3 minutes. All this time, still over a DWI walkaway. And that's interesting. The landline call at 11:14 p.m. late Tuesday evening or midnight. Okay. Is it possible? And I don't know if we've discussed this before. So he's on the call with McDonald on the Monday. Then late Tuesday evening or midnight, he's on the phone with his parents. So were the plans made then? He gave them all the heads up. So then that 3 a.m. call was just the confirmation. Was that the confirmation that he could finally get leave and then they were all going to drive there? I mean, we really don't know, but it definitely looks like some plans were made early on. Also, from various news articles, her son arrived, Sharon Rausch's son arrived at Maura's dorm room with police just 2 days after she went missing. So another poster writes this. Actually, my response to the previous post was this. I'm sure there are plenty of cases when this was done over a DUI walkaway. Let's add on former teachers, mentors, and their spouses taking off work to make the drive as well. So another poster's response to this, if this is true, it makes the whole timeline with all the calls, a flight connecting flight, and driving all over New England Wednesday look nearly impossible. Billy Rausch claims he received the whimpering call voicemail on either Tuesday or Wednesday, and at some point he learned that the Saturn was found abandoned on the road in New Hampshire and Maura disappeared from the scene. If Billy Rausch was told Maura was missing and last seen in New Hampshire, why the heck would he go to her dorm room at UMass first? Regardless, that seems like a ton of driving back and forth. Not to mention, he said his parents met him in Connecticut and they drove to New Hampshire, but he also said he went to the dorm room upon coming and going with McDonald. So all of these people who are not even Maura's relatives are allowed in her dorm. I believe Kathleen was also in the room, but when, who knows. So did they rendezvous with the McDonalds in Connecticut? I mean, we really don't know. I mean, we have to take on faith the word of a lot of these people. Another interesting point is that Billy Rausch actually called the Holiday Inn in Bartlett, New Hampshire right away. And then when asked about it, he said he was just checking if Maura was reserving a room there. Fred also made a statement that he thought she was heading to Bartlett. And that's where Billy Rausch called. So what made them think that she was headed to Bartlett? What else did Billy Rausch know? Again, there's so much here to go over and so much that's unknown. But Sharon Rausch, Peabody, all these multiple accounts by both Sharon and Billy Rausch allegedly, what does it all mean and why do so many trolls and obfuscators, narrative steerers, have a nothing to see attitude about it? So, I mean, it's weird. Even if Bill Rausch and Sharon, if they're the good guys, they're not responsible. They were trying to help Maura. It's still weird behavior. How is acknowledging that it's weird behavior that triggering for the steerers and the obfuscators? The other steerers and obfuscators. There's, of course, many different groups of steerers and obfuscators in this case. But yeah, that's going over Sharon. I mean, there's plenty more to come. I still have to finish the analysis of Art Roderick and Maggie Freeling and Art's obvious steering and obfuscation, which I've gone over in logical analysis in past episodes. Plenty more to go over, plenty more steering and obfuscation to uncover what it all means. That is still up to debate. But all we can really do is keep awareness up in the case and hope that it is solved soon. I actually cannot believe this is episode 61. I never envisioned it would get this far, especially with the Oxygen series coming out. It really seemed like it would shake something loose, and perhaps it did. Perhaps it exposed all the obvious steering and obfuscation on the part of Art Roderick, on the part of law enforcement, and now on the part of Billy Rausch and Sharon Rausch. Is that going to lead to the truth? Hopefully, because obviously justice is deserved and closure is deserved. Hope you guys found another episode of the Mindshock Maura Murray podcast series interesting and enlightening. And there are always more questions than answers, right? You can't have the right answers if you don't have the right questions. You can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help us get more episodes out there in a faster frequency, not just for this cold case, but for others to keep the awareness up. If you like this particular episode, hit the like button, share it on social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell for notifications. You can also just go to youtube.com/Mindshock to see all the latest episodes and peruse our ever-growing back catalog. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.